r/AskReddit. What was the most messed up thing you saw in school? A kid in my school year stabbed one of my friends in the back. Not verbally, I mean with an actual kitchen knife. We were 11. When I was 9, someone stabbed another kid in the back with a maths compass. Just randomly with no real motive or logic. Why do the most violent stories here involve elementary age kids? Cause kids at that age are psychopaths. A kid jumped over the balcony to try and beat the rush on mashed potato day. He broke both his legs. Did not get his potatoes. Took me too long to realize mashed potato day is probably just the day your cafeteria serves mashed potatoes, and not some kind of big yearly mashed potato event at your school. Oh man, I wish it would been a mashed potato event. That would have been so amazing. But also, no, just plain old mashed potato day. It was every Friday and always a madhouse trying to get down to the cafeteria due to the way the school was set up. A couple ducking in the dumpster behind the cafeteria. For the rest of the year, people would walk up behind the dude crinkling paper and asking if it was getting him hard. Like physically in the dumpster, or just behind it in some sort of enclosure? Inside the dumpster. Where the trash belongs. Why didn't they just do it next to the dumpster? Privacy, bro. I had a friend that was allergic to so many things he had to eat the same thing every day that he brought from home. I literally mean every day for years. He had a very bad day, failed a test, some things happened at home. We met up at lunch and he had 2 slices of pepperoni pizza. He said, "Today seems like a good day to die," and proceeded to wolf down both slices. I had never seen him so happy. I walked him to the nurse's office as he ballooned up. He was hospitalized for 2 weeks. He never regretted the decision. That's kinda funny, just because he had no regrets, but damn, it's sad that schoolwork pushes people in that direction. Yes, but school lunch isn't the way to go. If you wanna die, then it probably is. Our school bully, nasty piece of work, we'll call her Christine, ripped the wig off a new student, Allison, who had recently returned from cancer treatment. They got into it, and Allison was suspended despite multiple witnesses. We suspect even the teachers were slightly scared of Christine. Next day as we were leaving, Allison was waiting outside for the doors to open, comes straight in, grabs Christine's hair, slams her head into a locker, then proceeds to pull out a huge pair of scissors, and violently chops off as much hair as she can before the teachers intervene. She was obviously expelled, but man, she's still my hero. Bully Christine was definitely put in her place after that and absolutely toned down her torment of everyone else. Wish I knew what became of Allison. On to the bully. So there is a reason I couldn't pull up any current info on her, and as I suspected, she did pass away in 2003. This is not cause for celebration, as from what I gleaned from old friends it was a suspected drug overdose. She wasn't a kind person by any means, but she was also dealt a pretty shitty hand, and I feel sad for her, and those that loved her. Wait, so the school suspended a cancer patient for having her own wig ripped off? How did they justify that? By the time the teachers showed up, Allison was sitting on top of Christine, plummeting her violently, for good reason, so they simply took everything at face value, ignoring our accounts of what started the whole thing. I saw the PE teacher getting a heart attack during class and dying. It was ducking scary. Half the teachers at my school are old, some 80 plus, so it is inevitable that will happen at my school one day. They train all the students how to use a defib and do CPR, which I personally think all schools should do anyway. Some kid kept shitting in the sink every week, and they had to keep cleaning it up. One day I walked in the bathroom and someone had put shit on the wall. Had some girls in my high school who were creating works of art in the same fashion. They were deemed the fecal phantoms and were never caught. A kid clipped the tip of his tongue off with a pair of safety scissors after someone dared him to. One of my brother's friends cut the very tip of his nose off cause someone dared him to. Maybe it was to spite his face. I worked at an American school in China a while back. One day, one of the school buses was on the way to campus from the city and there was an accident that students saw. A truck ran over a man riding his bicycle. The students on the bus witnessed the accident and watched as the man lay dying on the road. They were stuck in traffic and couldn't get away from the horrific scene for over 20 minutes. Kids were crying and traumatized. Most of them were elementary school students. There was a lot of grief counseling in the months after that. Wow. Were you able to do anything to calm the kids down? Or were you in shock yourself? Yes, many of us were in shock too. Details given by the bus driver just made the whole situation seem even worse. The bus driver was amazing by the way, he helped calm the students down on the rest of the long drive to school. He was fantastic. According to him, the truck driver drove off, and no police came for a long time. Bus driver was Chinese, and radioed to other buses about the accident, and told them to take a different route, and they all monitored to the radio for information about the situation. Anyway, we had some wonderful counselors in the elementary school, and our principal and assistant principal stepped in to help as well. The students were more in shock, to begin with, rather than openly upset and crying by the time they reached school, again, thanks to the great bus driver who had a wonderful rapport with the students. Thankfully, there were not many students per bus. I think that bus was one of the larger buses, but it still only had 10 to 12 students, compared to American buses which hold 40 to 50 students at least. The school did a good job communicating with parents right away, so they knew what happened and got some information about what the school was doing to help. In the end, while all students were monitored on an ongoing basis, only a few showed need for weekly sessions with one of the counselors over the course of the next few months. It was crazy, and I wonder about those kids and what they remember. It had to be scarring, and our scope of care was limited. We just tried to keep them in their regular routine as much as possible and watch for any signs of social withdrawal, etc. A kid hung himself on a playground our senior year. I hear his brother found him. This all happened a week after two of the brother's friends, also seniors, died when they wrapped their classic Mustang around a tree near the high school. Made for a rough senior year to say the least. Jesus Christ, poor guy. How's he doing now? I hear he's hanging in there. A girl was coming back from a doctor's appointment and wasn't there to hear that we couldn't get out equipment for recess. She opened the door, grabbed something and went to leave. The wind kicked up and slammed the door on her hand and she lost a finger. They rushed her to the hospital and they sewed it back on and eventually it was back to normal, but that was the most ducked up thing I had seen. I actually remember that happening to someone in the daycare my mom put me in. Needless to say I didn't stay in that daycare for very long. This girl in my sophomore year sent nudes to an English teacher. When he rejected her advances, she reported him for possession of child pornography. He lost his job, his teaching license, and nearly faced jail time. He was a pretty chill dude too, and was well liked by the student body. Goes without saying, the girl received a ton of death threats, and ended up dropping out. How did she have his number to send them? For some strange reason, giving out personal phone numbers to students wasn't frowned upon in my high school and some teachers would specifically print out their cell phone number on their class syllabus. A girl had diarrhea and was wearing tights and sitting in class and the tights started getting really lumpy, but she didn't get up to go to the bathroom. What the duck? Many years ago I sat next to a kid in high school who went on to kill his mom. He would always bring in photos of homemade bombs from 2-liter bottles, flamethrowers from squirt guns, etc. I thought it was the coolest thing and was so impressed by it until later on when I recognized I was encouraging a to-be murderer to keep being violent. I remember a lot kids being interested in fire and blowing shit up, with fireworks mostly, and most turn out fine. Ask a crowd of people if they used to play with either, and I'd bet just about everyone will have some stories. Watch two girls get into a fight. One girl had a bunch of ear piercings and was wearing so many hoops it looked like chainmail. The other girl got her on the ground, grabbed those hoops and pulled hard. I will never forget the scream. The rings didn't give, but her ear sure as hell did. Blood everywhere, the girl standing over her like a goddamn psychopath holding a very recognizable ear in the air above her head. It was ducking Mortal Kombat in real life. Girl fights in school were always nuts. My very first day of high school, two girls got in a fight. They were punching each other, clawing at their faces, and ripping each other's weave out, and a teacher came to stop them. Well, this teacher was rewarded with a shot to the kidney, and he got dropped. What an intro to high school that was. A giant hawk swooped down on campus and sunk its talons into the back of a squirrel foraging for acorns about 20 or 25 yards from me. Scared the bejesus out of me. He stood on it like a boss for a few seconds and then flew off with it. This was at like 7:30 in the morning, so it took me a while to wrap my brain around it. The guy walking in front of me spun around and said, "Please tell me you saw that." The circle of life is quite beautiful. We, entire school, watched some guy jump from 12th floor. Damn, your school has 12 floors? Wayside school gets a little stranger. We had this girl in our school who was a year older than me. I didn't knew her very well, but we sometimes made small talk. Soon I noticed she wasn't in school anymore, so I assumed she moved or something like that. 5 months later she came back to school, completely covered in self-harm scars, and by that I don't mean just the arms or legs, chest, her neck, her hands and even her back had multiple scars. She avoided everyone and became a loner. Once I was going to the bathroom during the lesson, and when I opened the door she was standing there cutting herself and crying. I was mortified, but sat next to her and just held her. We sat there for 20 minutes before a teacher came and quickly called the ambulance because she bled so much that we sat in a puddle of her blood. I will never forget how much she cried when medicals wanted to help her up, but she let out the most blood-freezing scream I ever heard. They had to restrain her so they could take her to a hospital. I sat there for some more time and just stared at my bloody appearance. I got sent home and just showered and went to bed. She was admitted to a mental hospital where I visited her, and she is doing much better now there. I visit her regularly, and we became great friends. Sounds like you did a great job of being there for her. Nice. It was a rival football game and the stands were packed. A section of the old wood bleachers collapsed, and 20 or so students went to the hospital with numerous broken bones, concussions, and lacerations of various degrees. During the same game, I saw a guy get hit so hard in the leg that it shattered, and both bones were showing. Poor kid ended up in a wheelchair for the rest of the school year. I know it has nothing to do with your comment, but it reminded me about a classmate who had his leg broken and had to use a wheelchair. An earthquake happened, and he was left all alone in the classroom while everyone else evacuated. Bonus, we once had a gas leak, but fortunately everyone returned home safely. Second bonus, my school also went bankrupt 1 month ago because the owners had a crippling debt with the bank and didn't pay rent for the building we were using. When I was 8 we were making cookies in class and they gave us square cheese graters to make chocolate chips with because they didn't trust us with knives. A fair judgment. Some kid was holding a few graters and pretended to be a robot. This girl shouted at him because he wasn't a robot and proceeded to take one of the graters and grate his hand. Lots of blood happened and then a pair of twins both fainted. The duck. What happened to the person who tried to grate the kid's hand? I don't recall her getting in trouble at all. Not that I saw anyway. I think it was just put down as an accident. Saw a girl stomp on another girl's jaw with her high-heeled boot for looking at her boyfriend at the next lunch table over. I heard she had to get her jaw wired. I hope she was charged with assault. That is disgusting. In college, a guy dressed as Gandalf came into the classroom and said, "You shall not pass," then left. It was right before finals. After all these comments about shootings, fights sending in severed appendages and people shitting everywhere except the bathrooms, your comment is very refreshing. Also, I hope you passed the finals. Someone's phone blew up in our school courtyard. Rest of the day smelt like battery juice. This post was sponsored by Samsung Note 7. A phone that gives you a bombastic feeling. There was a ginger vegan that would chew carrots up in his mouth and chase people around, spitting carrots at them. He ended up getting his head slammed into a bag hook in a fight afterwards. Did he die? It feels like someone who gets their head slammed into a bag hook isn't going to survive. No, he survived thankfully. It was 11-year-olds, so they weren't strong yet. There was a girl I was friends with who had developed early and had pretty big boobs and considered thick for a 5th grader. Hanged with a group of 5 or 6 girls. Most of the girls in this group were short, skinny, and the pretty ones of the class, so she stuck out from that group. During recess, these 5 girls ganged up on her and pulled down, sometimes ripping her shirt exposing her chest, and laugh cause they thought it was funny. She'd fight it and tell them to stop, but they'd do it even more, sometimes pinning her arms to the side so they could. She ended up hanging out with me more and finding different friends in middle school. Jesus fucking Christ. This is just straight sexual assault. These were her friends and they were pinning her down and pulling her shirt down. There was one kid in my high school that everyone bullied relentlessly. He was pretty overweight and nerdy, but a good kind-hearted person in general. One really popular girl, possibly hottest and meanest in the whole school, decided to humiliate him, so she seduced him and told him to wait for her in the bathroom stall. When she met him over there, she lifted her shirt and told him to drop his pants. When he exposed himself, she pulled out her phone and snapped a picture, then sent it to everyone she could, telling everyone he was creeping on her, and flashed her. He got suspended and was gonna be prosecuted. Few days later, he hit her with his car, leaving her paralyzed, and then killed himself. Mexican gang member stabbed another Mexican gang member in the neck with a pencil in class. It was 8th grade. He lived. Jew and Wick. My middle school teacher did a thing where we could bring our pets to school. A kid in my class got attacked by a macaw after he tried to grab it off a desk so he could play with it, and had to go to the hospital to get stitches. I was suspended and grounded for bringing a macaw to school. I seen a teacher have a literal mental breakdown in front of an entire class. He was our English teacher and was in charge of looking after the kids that other teachers could and wouldn't deal with. I guess one day he just snapped. Stood up, threw a chair at a pupil, and started punching holes in walls and screaming in a really psychotic manner. The teacher next door heard the commotion and realized pretty quickly what was happening. She came in and persuaded him to go with her to the staff room or something, and we never seen him again.